My name is Amelia, I'm 42, and I never thought my own brother would betray me like this. When I came back home, I found strangers living in my house, strangers who swore they bought it fair and square. That's when I realized my brother had sold the only place I called home. He didn't know one thing, though. It wasn't just any house. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe for more true stories about family, betrayal, and emotional courage. I still remember the weight of my suitcase as I dragged it up the front steps of my house. It wasn't heavy because of the clothes inside. It was heavy because I had been counting down the days, waiting to return to the one place that gave me comfort, home. After weeks away visiting my daughter in Ohio, I was tired, achy, and ready to collapse into the familiar creak of my old armchair. The sky was soft with evening light, the kind that makes everything look calm and safe. Yet something immediately felt wrong. I stopped halfway up the steps. The first thing I noticed was the porch. It wasn't mine anymore, not exactly. Someone had placed new plants in shiny pots on the railing. A set of bright blue curtains hung in the living room window, where my beige ones used to be. My stomach tightened. Maybe the neighbor kids played a prank. I muttered under my breath, though my voice shook. But the unease only grew stronger when I spotted a car in the driveway, a small silver sedan with fresh registration tags. I didn't recognize it. My brother sometimes parked in my driveway, but this wasn't his car. My pulse picked up as I gripped my keys tighter. I hurried up the last few steps, fumbling with the lock. The key slid in, but refused to turn. I twisted harder, my hands trembling, but it was like pushing against a wall. A wave of heat rushed to my face. This had to be a mistake. Maybe the lock jammed. I leaned in, squinting. It wasn't jammed. The lock was new. Someone had changed it. My heart slammed in my chest. I knocked, half hoping no one would answer, so I could pretend this was all some bizarre coincidence. Instead, the door opened with a soft creak, and I froze in place. A woman stood there, holding a baby on her hip. She wasn't someone I knew. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her t-shirt stained from what looked like baby food. The baby squirmed in her arms, fussing. She looked at me with wide, guarded eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously, like I was the intruder. The words lodged in my throat. I stared past her shoulder into the living room. The couch wasn't mine. The pictures on the wall weren't mine. My bookshelf, gone. My favorite rug, gone. Every piece of the home I had built over the years was missing. In its place was a stranger's life. I finally stammered, This is my house. What are you doing here?" The woman tightened her hold on the baby and frowned. "Your house?" "No, this is our house. We bought it last month." Her words knocked the air right out of me. My vision blurred. "Bought it?" My lips trembled as I shook my head. "That's impossible. I live here. This house is mine. I've had it for over 15 years. She sighed and shifted the baby to her other hip, then stepped back, opening the door wider. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but we bought this place fair and square. My husband has all the papers. Maybe you should talk to him." I stepped inside without even realizing it, my shoes sinking into a rug I didn't recognize. The air smelled different too, a mix of baby powder and fresh paint. My throat tightened. This wasn't just someone visiting. They had moved in. Completely. The sound of footsteps came from the hallway, and then a man appeared. He was tall, with work boots and a wary expression. "What's going on?" he asked, eyeing me like I was about to cause trouble. "She says this is her house," the woman explained. His jaw tightened. He disappeared into another room and returned with a folder of documents. Without saying much, he handed them to me. "Here, proof. We paid cash. Signed and sealed." My hands shook as I opened the folder. The papers looked official. My name was there, but the signature wasn't mine. My brother's handwriting jumped off the page, sloppy and unmistakable. The room spun. I pressed my hand to the wall for balance. My brother. He had done this. He had sold my house. The man's voice cut through my fog. We don't want any trouble, lady. We've got a baby. We thought everything was legal. I wanted to scream, to shout, to fall on the floor, and cry all at once. Instead, I clenched the papers tighter, my nails digging into the edge. This isn't legal, I whispered, more to myself than to them. It can't be. The woman softened a little, maybe sensing the crack in my voice. Maybe there's some mistake. You should talk to whoever signed those papers. We didn't mean to take anything that wasn't ours. I swallowed hard, my throat raw. My brother's face flashed in my mind, his grin when he borrowed money, his smooth words when he promised he'd pay it back, the lies I had overlooked again and again. But this wasn't money. This was my home, the one place I thought was safe. I backed toward the door, still clutching the folder. I need to make some calls. I managed. The man nodded, relief flickering across his face. Please do. We've got nothing to hide. Outside, the evening air hit me like ice. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, staring at my brother's number. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted to know why. Why he would strip me of the only thing I had left. I didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, I sat on the porch steps, staring at the house that no longer felt like mine. The sound of the baby crying drifted through the window. It was like my whole life had been erased and replaced in the time I was gone. And deep down, a terrifying thought clawed its way to the surface. If my brother had done this behind my back, what else had he done that I didn't know about? The porch light flickered above me as I sat with the folder pressed against my chest. My hands were trembling, not from the evening chill, but from the fire in my stomach. I didn't have the strength to stand yet. My knees felt locked, my breath shallow, and the truth was clawing at me. My brother had stolen the roof over my head. I finally unlocked my phone and dialed his number. Each ring pounded in my ear like a drum, and by the time his voice came through, I was already holding back tears. "Hey, sis," he answered casually, like nothing was wrong, like my whole world hadn't been ripped apart an hour earlier. I didn't bother with greetings. My voice cracked as I forced the words out. "Why are there strangers living in my house? Daniel." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for me to hear the guilt laced in his silence. Then he chuckled, as if trying to play it off. "Oh, you mean the Johnsons? Yeah, about that. I figured you'd find out sooner or later." The calmness in his tone made my skin crawl. I stood from the steps, pacing the sidewalk, my free hand gripping my hair. "You sold it? Daniel, tell me you didn't sell my house." His sigh was slow, tired, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Look, Amelia, you were gone. The place was just sitting there. They made a good offer, cash in hand. I took it. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. The word stabbed deeper than any insult. My heart thudded painfully as I leaned against the mailbox to steady myself. Not a big deal. You forged my signature. You sold the only thing I had left without even telling me. Daniel's voice hardened. "You're overreacting. It's just a house. You can buy another one. I needed the money, all right?" My chest tightened. I felt my throat close, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "You had no right. No right, Daniel. How could you, after everything I've done for you? After all the times I covered for you, loaned you money, bailed you out when no one else would." He scoffed, his tone laced with resentment. "Oh, here we go. Saint Amelia, always reminding me of how generous she is. You think I don't know you've been keeping score all these years? Maybe I wanted something for myself, for once." I bit my lip until I tasted blood, rage flooding my veins. He wasn't just unapologetic. He was blaming me. My own brother. Something for yourself. I whispered, my voice shaking. You didn't just take money, Daniel. You took my home. You took the one place I felt safe. He didn't respond right away. In the silence, memories came rushing back. The nights he crashed on my couch after gambling away his paycheck. The mornings I made him coffee because he was too hungover to stand the countless second chances I gave him. And now this. When he finally spoke, his voice was clipped. Look, I can't undo it. The deal's done. You'll just have to figure something out. The line went dead before I could reply. He had hung up on me. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the night pressing down on me. My brother had stolen more than bricks and walls. He had stolen trust, blood ties, and the fragile bond we had left. The next morning, I drove to my sister-in-law's place, Daniel's ex-wife, Karen. She and I had stayed on decent terms, though our conversations usually circled around her kids and work. When she opened the door and saw my swollen eyes, she knew something was wrong. Amelia, she asked softly, what happened? I stepped inside and collapsed onto her couch, the words tumbling out like water breaking through a dam. He sold my house, Karen. He forged my signature and sold it while I was gone. She gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God! I knew he was in trouble again, but I didn't think he'd sink this low. What kind of trouble? I demanded, sitting up straighter. She hesitated, chewing her lip. Then she leaned closer. He's been mixed up with some guys in town. Owes them a lot of money. I think he was desperate. But Amelia, if he really sold your house, this isn't just about desperation. This is about betrayal. He crossed a line he can't uncross. Her words sank into me like stones. Betrayal. That was the word that had been circling in my mind all night, and now hearing it out loud made it real. Karen handed me a cup of coffee, her eyes full of pity. You can't cover for him this time. You always protect him, always step in. But look at what he's done. He doesn't care who he hurts as long as he gets what he wants. I clutched the mug, my hands shaking. She was right. I had always defended him, always believed he'd change. And now, sitting in her living room with nothing but the clothes in my suitcase, I realized I had been wrong all along. Later that day, I drove to Daniel's apartment. He lived on the edge of town, in a rundown building that smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes. I knocked until my knuckles ached, and finally he opened the door, bleary-eyed and irritated. What are you doing here? He muttered. I pushed past him, the stench of unwashed laundry hitting me like a wall. I'm here because you stole my life, Daniel. Look at this place. You can't even take care of yourself, and you thought you could take my house. He rolled his eyes, lighting a cigarette. You're being dramatic. I slapped the papers onto his cluttered table. Dramatic? Your handwriting is right here. You didn't even try to hide it. You sold my house to strangers, and now you want me to believe this is nothing. He blew out smoke, his expression blank. You'll land on your feet. You always do. My voice rose, my anger no longer containable. No, Daniel, not this time. I'm done cleaning up after you. I'm done covering your messes. You betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. For a moment, just a flicker, his mask slipped. His eyes softened, almost like he wanted to apologize. But then his jaw tightened, and he shook his head. It's just business. Don't make it personal. That was it. That was the moment something in me broke. He wasn't going to take responsibility. He wasn't going to admit the damage he'd caused. I turned and walked out, my heart pounding, my legs weak. As I stepped into the daylight, the truth burned inside me. I no longer had a brother. I had an enemy who shared my blood. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in Karen's guest room reminded me of the silence of my own house. My chest ached, my mind racing with questions. Why had I trusted him? Why hadn't I seen it coming? And most painfully, what was I supposed to do now? I pulled the papers from my bag and spread them across the bed. My brother's scrawl taunted me from the bottom of the contract, my name forged like it meant nothing. As I stared at the ink, one thought cut through the haze of grief. Daniel thought he had won. He thought he could steal from me and walk away untouched. But he had no idea the house he sold wasn't just a house. And he was about to learn that some betrayals carry consequences you can't run from. The living room looked nothing like the one I had left behind. My mother's quilt, the one she had carefully stitched with blues and grays, was folded over the back of the couch, but the couch itself was unfamiliar, sleek leather, smelling faintly of polish. A framed photo of a family I didn't recognize rested on the mantel where my grandmother's clock used to sit. My heart thudded, each beat heavier than the last. The man who had opened the door, mid-40s salt and pepper beard, steady eyes, gestured toward the couch as though he were offering hospitality in his home. Please sit down. We'll explain everything. I don't want to sit. I shot back, my voice trembling. I want to know why you're in my house. This is my property. My family's property. The woman, maybe his wife, stepped forward cautiously. She held a thick manila envelope pressed to her chest like it was both a shield and a weapon. We're not here illegally, she said, her tone careful but firm. We have the paperwork to prove it. That word, paperwork, hit me like ice water down my spine. I forced myself to take a breath, though my hands shook so badly, I shoved them into my jacket pockets. Show me. The man didn't hesitate. He motioned for his wife to hand me the envelope. I half expected her to resist, but she offered it over, her eyes never leaving mine. I could see sympathy there, or maybe pity, but pity only made my skin crawl. I slid the documents out, the crackle of the paper loud in the too-quiet room. Neatly clipped copies of deeds, sales agreements, and an official-looking transfer document, complete with signatures and notary stamps, stared back at me. My brother's name scrawled across the lines was unmistakable, his sloppy signature looping too high on the R. For a second, my breath caught. It was real. This wasn't some cheap scam. It was legal. My brother had actually sold the house. He didn't have the right, I muttered, my eyes burning as I flipped through the pages. He couldn't have done this. The woman folded her arms, her voice soft but edged with caution. We didn't know. There was a problem. We paid in good faith. We even ran the title through the federal system. Everything checked out. Federal system? I asked, my tone sharp. The man leaned against the arm of the couch, studying me like someone assessing whether I was about to break. This isn't just ordinary property, is it? That question froze me. My father had once told me offhandedly, like it was no big deal, that part of our land had restrictions tied to a federal preservation program. It was one of those things I never paid much attention to, tucked away in legal jargon that sounded more like background noise than family history. Until now, I closed the folder with a snap. What exactly did you two check with the federal system? The man exchanged a glance with his wife before answering. We submitted the paperwork to confirm ownership. That's standard for properties tied to federal protections. It came back clean. We wouldn't have bought otherwise. The room tilted slightly. I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself. Clean. How could it have come back clean? Unless my brother had somehow maneuvered through loopholes, covered his tracks, or, worse, someone inside had helped him. Anger surged through me, but beneath it, a cold fear settled. I sat down finally, though the leather cushions beneath me felt foreign, as though the house itself was rejecting me. Let me be very clear, I said slowly, looking from one stranger to the other. This home has been in my family for decades. My brother had no authority to sell it, and I will not accept that I've lost it because of forged or twisted paperwork. The woman's lips tightened. We understand this is hard, but we didn't forge anything. We went through proper channels. And yet, I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. You're sitting in a house that doesn't belong to you. The man exhaled, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His calmness infuriated me because it contrasted so sharply with the chaos twisting in my chest. Look, Amelia, right? That's what your brother said your name was when we signed. My stomach lurched. The fact that my brother had used my name like a prop in this betrayal made me want to scream. The man continued, his tone almost apologetic. He said you were moving away, that you'd signed over your share because you wanted to be done with the place. He seemed convincing, said it was a family decision. I laughed bitterly, though it came out more like a choked sob. A family decision? My brother doesn't even know what that word means. The woman hesitated, then sat across from me, placing her hands on the folder between us. If what you're saying is true, then maybe you should contact the federal office. They're the only ones who can untangle this. We don't want to be caught in the middle of something we didn't intend. Her words weren't cruel. In fact, they sounded reasonable. But reason didn't dull the sting of betrayal. I pushed the folder back toward them. Keep it. I don't need copies of lies. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out and saw an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Miss Carson? The voice was male, official sounding, clipped. This is Agent Reynolds with the Federal Property Oversight Division. We need to speak regarding recent activity on your home address. My breath caught. The strangers leaned forward unconsciously, trying to catch pieces of the conversation. Yes, I said cautiously, my eyes darting to the man and woman in front of me. I'm here now. What is this about? The agent paused, his voice tightening. Records show a transfer of ownership that may conflict with federal protective status. We'd like you to come into our office tomorrow morning to clarify your role in the property. My pulse thundered. Clarify my role? What had my brother dragged me into? I'll be there, I whispered. As soon as I hung up, the silence in the room thickened. The man raised an eyebrow. Federal office? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was too busy spinning with questions. How deep did this betrayal go? What had my brother done, and why had the federal system allowed it to pass? I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Enjoy the house while you can, I said coldly, because this isn't over, not by a long shot. Neither of them tried to stop me as I stormed out, but as the door clicked shut behind me, I couldn't shake the sight of their uneasy expressions. They weren't just strangers in my home. They were pawns, unknowingly tied to a much larger, darker web. And tomorrow, the federal paperwork would pull me straight into its center. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table in the rental apartment, the copy of those forged documents spread out in front of me. The air was stale. My coffee had gone cold hours earlier, and my hands trembled each time I picked up the papers. My brother's handwriting leapt off the page, clumsy, uneven, and unmistakable. The buyers had waved them around like a shield, but what caught my eye wasn't his scrawl. It was the small federal seal printed faintly at the bottom corner. That seal meant one thing. He hadn't just sold my house illegally. He had sold protected property. By morning, I made up my mind. Fear mixed with fury, and I drove straight to the county office. The clerk behind the counter was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of patience that had probably been tested by years of long lines and angry residents. I handed her the copies, my voice shaky as I explained. She skimmed the first page, then froze. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Without saying a word, She disappeared into the back office, leaving me standing there with my heart hammering in my chest. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A man in a suit with a badge clipped to his belt walked beside her. "Ma'am," he said, extending his hand, "I'm Agent Walker. I need you to come with me." I followed him into a small office where he closed the door gently, not dramatically, but the sound still echoed like a verdict. He laid the papers on the desk and tapped the federal seal. "You realize this isn't just a forgery issue, right? This property falls under federal preservation. Any sale, any transfer, any lease, even minor modifications, require approval." His eyes lifted to meet mine. "Who did this?" I swallowed hard. "My brother. His name is Daniel. He forged my signature and sold it while I was out of town." Agent Walker scribbled notes, nodding slowly. "Do you know where he is now?" I let out a bitter laugh. "If I knew, I wouldn't be sitting here. He's good at disappearing when things get messy." The agent leaned back, studying me. "Ma'am, I need to be honest with you. What he did is a federal crime. Fraud alone is serious, but fraud involving protected property, that's another level. This isn't going to be just a family dispute anymore." The weight of his words hit me like a brick. By the next day, federal investigators visited the house itself. I wasn't there for the first walkthrough, but the buyers were. A neighbor later told me they looked rattled as agents measured, photographed, and asked endless questions. Cars I didn't recognize lined the street, their tinted windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. That evening, I received a call from one of the investigators. They wanted me to provide a statement on record. I spent nearly 3 hours in a small interview room answering question after question. When I last saw the property, when I discovered the forgery, what I knew about my brother's financial troubles. Every detail I gave seemed to stitch a tighter net around him. But the emotional toll was heavier than I expected. Each night, I lay awake thinking about Daniel. We grew up in that house together. I remembered us as kids chasing fireflies in the backyard, fighting over the bigger slice of birthday cake, whispering secrets through the wall at night. Somewhere along the way, those memories twisted. He borrowed money he never paid back. He lied, manipulated, and shrugged when confronted. Still, I never imagined he'd sell the very walls that held our childhood. Now, strangers rocked their baby to sleep in what used to be my bedroom. And the government was circling, not because I called them, but because his arrogance had triggered laws bigger than either of us. The next twist came quickly. A week after my interview, the buyers reached out. The husband sounded panicked. "We didn't know," he insisted over the phone, his voice high and nervous. "We didn't know it was protected property. We just wanted a home. Please tell them that." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "I already told the truth. I can't protect you from what you signed. That's between you and the government." Silence stretched on the line before he muttered, "Your brother said everything was fine." My throat burned with anger. He's been saying that his whole life. Soon after, Agent Walker called me again. They had located Daniel. "He's in Ohio," the agent explained, calm but firm. "We're coordinating with local authorities. Once he's in custody, you'll be notified." I thought I'd feel relief, but instead, a wave of grief washed over me. I pictured him being handcuffed, shuffled into the back of a squad car, his smirk wiped away. For a moment, guilt gnawed at me. Was I really letting my brother face federal prison? Then I remembered the look on that stranger woman's face when she told me my house was hers. I remembered the lock rejecting my key. Yes, I thought. He chose this path. When the arrest happened, the news spread through my small community like wildfire. Neighbors whispered at the grocery store. Old friends sent cautious texts, asking if I was okay. A cousin even called, her voice heavy with judgment. "Amelia, he's still your brother," she said. I snapped. He's also a criminal. You didn't lose your home because of him. I did. There was no response, just a heavy sigh before she hung up. I realized then how isolating this fight was. People wanted me to forgive, to fold, to excuse. They weren't the ones standing in front of their stolen house, facing strangers with forged papers. The legal process was slow, but each step seemed to peel another layer off my heart. Investigators uncovered not only the house sale, but also other schemes: bad checks, fake loan applications, debts he tried to bury under different names. Daniel wasn't just careless. He was deliberate. During one meeting with the prosecutor, I asked, "What's going to happen to him?" The man in the gray suit leaned forward. "If convicted, he's looking at several years. This isn't minor. This is federal fraud." His words echoed in my ears. Several years. Prison time. A reality I never thought I'd hear attached to my brother's name. Despite everything, the hardest moment came when I saw him face to face again. We were both summoned to a hearing. He walked into the room in handcuffs. His once proud shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked smaller than me, diminished like a child caught stealing cookies, but the consequences were far greater. Our eyes met across the room. His expression wasn't apologetic. It was angry. He mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I knew what it was. "You did this to me." No, I thought. "You did this to yourself." After the hearing, Agent Walker pulled me aside. "You've done the right thing, Amelia. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but the law is supposed to protect people like you." His reassurance helped, but only a little, because even if the law was on my side, it couldn't erase the hole Daniel left in my trust. The weeks dragged into months as the case unfolded. Each update came with a mixture of dread and relief. I watched from the sidelines as the federal machine rolled forward, unstoppable. My role was no longer active. I had given my testimony, handed over the documents, done my part. Now I waited. In that waiting, I started to rebuild small pieces of my life. I visited the house with agents during inspections, walking through the familiar rooms. Dust coated the windowsills, boxes sat half unpacked, and the family that thought they owned it had already moved out. The place felt caught between worlds, neither fully theirs nor fully mine. One afternoon, as I stood in the kitchen, Agent Walker said, "You'll get it back. It'll take time, but you will." I nodded, though my throat tightened. I just wish it hadn't come to this. His gaze softened. Betrayal rarely asks for permission. Those words stayed with me. Every time I thought of Daniel, of his smirk, of his casual dismissals, of his callousness, I repeated that phrase. Betrayal rarely asks for permission. And slowly, I accepted that the law wasn't my enemy here. It was my ally. For once, I didn't have to clean up after him, cover his tracks, or swallow my anger. For once, the burden wasn't mine. The law had stepped in, and Daniel was finally facing something he couldn't talk or charm his way out of. The first time I unlocked my own door again, the key slid in smooth, no resistance. For a second, I froze with my hand on the knob. My heart pounded in my chest, my palm damp with sweat. This was supposed to feel like victory, but instead, it felt like stepping into something fragile, like walking into a memory that might shatter if I breathed too loudly. The hinges creaked as I pushed the door open. Dust floated in a beam of sunlight, drifting lazily across the living room. The walls carried faint scuff marks from the furniture the buyers had moved in, and the air smelled faintly of paint mixed with something unfamiliar, almost like cinnamon. For months, this place had belonged to strangers. Now, it was mine again, though it no longer felt the same. Boxes lined the hallway where agents had stacked belongings recovered during inspections. Some were mine, things I hadn't seen since before the sale. An old quilt folded neatly, framed photos wrapped in paper, the ceramic lamp my mother gave me. But other boxes weren't mine at all, forgotten remnants of the family who thought they had bought this house fair and square. A child stuffed rabbit, a mug with the word Dad faded on its side, a stack of unopened mail. Seeing those items brought a strange ache. They were victims too, in their own way. They wanted a home, not a court battle. I carried the stuffed rabbit into the yard and left it carefully on their porch later that day, with a note, "This belongs with you, not me." Reclaiming the house should have been joyful, but instead, it felt like stepping into a wound. Every room carried ghosts. The kitchen reminded me of my brother sneaking cookies as a boy. The living room reminded me of family gatherings before his lies started breaking us apart. Even the bedroom, stripped bare and cold, reminded me of that stranger woman cradling her baby and insisting it was hers. I walked through slowly, letting my fingers brush over door frames, countertops, and the stair rail. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream, and part of me wanted to laugh bitterly at how something as simple as walls and floors could carry so much pain. But I stayed. I stood in the silence and let the house remind me that it was still standing, even if my family wasn't. A week later, the official paperwork arrived in the mail. My ownership was restored, stamped and sealed. No more dispute, no more limbo. I sat at the table and stared at the documents for a long time, running my hand over the embossed seal. The victory was real, but victories don't erase scars. That night, my phone buzzed. A call from the prison. My stomach knotted as I stared at the screen. I knew who it was before I answered. "Amelia." His voice crackled through the line, weary but familiar. "It's me. It's Daniel." I didn't speak at first. The silence stretched, and he finally muttered, "You're really not going to say anything?" I exhaled slowly. "What is there to say?" He scoffed, that same dismissive tone he'd used our whole lives. "You could start with how you ruined me. You let them lock me up like I was some stranger." My grip on the phone tightened. "You are a stranger, Daniel. You sold my house. You forged my name. You didn't just hurt me, you dragged innocent people into your mess. And you think I ruined you." He chuckled bitterly. "Always dramatic. You know, I didn't mean it like that." The heat rose in my chest. "You never mean it. That's the problem. You do things, you hurt people, and then you shrug like it's nothing. Well, this time you can't shrug. You're sitting exactly where you put yourself." His voice dropped low. "You don't get it. I'm still your brother." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "Not anymore." And I hung up. After that call, I realized something. Reclaiming my house was only part of the battle. The harder part was accepting that I couldn't reclaim my brother. He wrote letters after that, long, rambling pages filled with excuses, half apologies, and requests for money. I read the first two, then I stopped opening them. Each envelope that arrived went straight into a drawer I didn't plan to open again. For years, I'd been his safety net. He'd jump, knowing I'd catch him. But not this time. I wasn't going to carry his weight anymore. Instead, I poured my energy into restoring the house. I scrubbed every surface, painted the walls fresh, and planted flowers in the garden the way my mother once did. Neighbors stopped by, some curious, some supportive. One older woman brought me pie and said softly, "It's good to see this place in the right hands again." Each repair, each coat of paint felt like reclaiming more than wood and brick. It felt like reclaiming myself. The house had been stolen, yes, but so had my sense of trust, my peace, my belonging. Little by little, I stitched it back together. One afternoon, I found myself sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, watching kids ride bikes down the street. For the first time in months, I felt calm. The wind rustled the trees, carrying the sound of laughter. It struck me then I didn't need Daniel's approval, his presence, or his excuses to feel whole. I only needed peace. And peace doesn't come from blood ties, it comes from boundaries. Family didn't vanish completely. Some relatives still called, asking if I'd reconsider, if I'd forgive. My cousin who once scolded me tried again. He's paying his price. Isn't that enough? I answered firmly this time. It's enough for the law, not for me. Because forgiveness, I realized, isn't about freeing the other person. It's about freeing yourself. And I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. The seasons turned. Autumn leaves scattered across the yard. Winter snow blanketed the roof. Spring brought blooms back to the garden. With each change, the house felt less like a battlefield and more like a sanctuary again. I filled the rooms with warmth. Family photos on the mantel, fresh curtains in the windows, music humming from the old record player. Friends visited, laughter echoing through the halls once more. Slowly, the house felt alive again, alive with my life, not the shadow of betrayal. But even in peace, grief lingers. Some nights, I'd lie in bed and remember the boy Daniel once was, the brother who made me laugh until I cried, who shared secrets in the dark, who promised we'd always look out for each other. That boy was gone. In his place was a man who saw me not as family, but as opportunity. And no matter how many coats of paint I applied, some stains never washed out. Still, I chose to live. Reclaiming the house wasn't just about bricks and boards. It was about reclaiming the choice to move forward. I learned that sometimes the family you lose makes space for the peace you gain. So when I sat on that porch again months later, sipping tea and listening to birds, I didn't feel bitter. I felt strong. Strong because I endured, strong because I let go, strong because I refused to carry someone else's mistakes anymore. My house was mine, my peace was mine, and my future was mine. Looking back now, I don't see the story as one of revenge. I see it as survival. Betrayal broke something in me, but it also built something new, a sharper sense of self, a deeper respect for boundaries, a clearer picture of what I will and won't accept. Daniel may always be my brother by blood, but he is no longer my family. My family is the peace I protect, the home I rebuilt, the life I now choose on my own terms. And that, to me, is worth more than forgiveness.